Hey guys, it's Emily B here with the buzz from the bee home. So I just want to jump into things just full blown here. I want to talk about what I call the dark side of motherhood. And what I mean by this is not cookies, but I want to talk about postpartum depression and anxiety. Postpartum depression and anxiety stole basically the first 6 weeks of motherhood and the enjoyment of my son from me. I was very afraid to admit to myself what was happening, and then when I did realize it, I thought, I can do this myself. I can get through this. I just need to woman up and do what I need to do and take care of my son and take care of myself and just learn how to enjoy myself. My son is in the background, so if you hear stuff, he's watching a movie and playing with toys. So if you hear him, that's just my son. No matter how much I thought, just muscle through this. No matter how much I thought that, I was sleep deprived. I had a huge life change because this was my first son, my first child, and I just realized that I couldn't do it myself. This was something more than just buck up and deal with it. So my story is I had my son. I had kind of a difficult labor. My water broke first, which is fine as long as you have the baby within 24 hours. Otherwise, there's a risk of infection, and the doctors don't like that. So my water broke first, and then after that, I just wasn't progressing. At about 28 hours of labor, I was checked, and I was only like 5 centimeters. And I just was exhausted and I just couldn't do it anymore. I did most of it without any painkillers on the front side. My husband and I made the decision to just go ahead with a C-section, which was absolutely not what I wanted. I wanted to do completely natural. We had the C-section. I had never had surgery before, so it was a very terrifying thing for me. And but we got through it. My son was super healthy. They were very happy with him. And then he was actually born the day before my birthday, which was kind of cool. But I was so doped up and just so exhausted that it didn't really set in that my son was born and it was cool. Sorry, I'm a dork. We had trouble with nursing on the front side. I had elected to breastfeed, and for some reason my son wouldn't latch right. He didn't have any kind of tongue tie or anything like that. He just did not want to latch and was stubborn, and nothing I did would help that. So they got me started on pumping in the hospital. I had to pump every 3 hours, like 24 hours a day for as long as possible. And my son still had trouble latching. He would never get enough food whenever I breastfed him. It was just terrible. So I ended up exclusively pumping, but that is for another day. But anyway, it was very stressful because of the way my body is and because of how my son was. I just couldn't nurse in public because I didn't feel comfortable. And I had extreme anxiety, so that was a thing all on its own. I ended up going to a lactation group where a bunch of moms get together, they weigh their babies, and then they nurse, and then they weigh their babies again and see how much milk the baby actually got. And I remember being there my first and only time, and I was talking to the lactation consultant. We tried to nurse and he didn't really get anything. So I was just kind of hanging around, and I started talking to the lactation consultant just kind of about our anxiety, about nursing and things like that. And she began to ask me some questions just about how we were at home and how generally things were going, not just in the breastfeeding and nursing department, but just in general, our home life and just things like that. And it didn't click for me until she said, I think that you are suffering from postpartum depression and anxiety. And she talked to me about it, and she was like, I think you really need to call your doctor and just go in and get some help, because this is not normal. This is not what all moms go through. Because I think I talked to her about like I don't know if this is what every mom is going through and I just can't handle it as well or something. But when she told me directly, you need to go and get help, that was kind of a game changer for me. And she completely changed my motherhood journey by telling me that. So I called my doctor that day. I made an appointment for the next day. The lactation consultant called me on my cell phone and double checked to make sure that I made the appointment, which was awesome because I kind of need that accountability in my life. And I went to the doctor. I got on some medication that just kind of took the edge off, and I was able to kind of work my way out of it. But it was hard. It was really hard. So all of this happened like really close to my 6-week postpartum milestone. I'm kind of upset that I didn't go and get an official diagnosis sooner, because it would have really changed the first couple weeks of motherhood for me. My son, he needed me. He wanted the familiarity. He wanted the familiarity of mom, and just like he wanted to be close to me. He wanted to smell me. He wanted to snuggle with me. He wanted all those things, and I just was so messed up in my head that I just couldn't handle anything. I think that we would have had a much better beginning, and I would have bonded with him a lot better, a lot faster than I did actually. So I want to tell you just some of the symptoms that I experienced personally. Not everyone has these symptoms, and these are not the only symptoms for PPD and PPA. I just want to share with you just the things that I personally experienced. So I would have massive crying episodes for literally no reason. I would just suddenly feel overwhelmed, and I would just start crying. And sorry, my son is playing with a toy. I would have epic panic attacks whenever I had to leave the house, or whenever somebody was coming to my house that was not my husband. And I literally could not go anywhere without having my husband with me. I had to actually take my son to a... Seth, what are you doing? You got your car? Motherhood. One time I had to take my son to the cardiologist 2 hours away from where we lived, and my husband was working at that time, and it was the middle of winter, and there was ice, and there were cars in the ditch, and I swear to this day that I felt the car jerking around, and there was something wrong with the car while I was driving, and I had to pull over and talk to my husband before I could get back on my way. So even if people were coming to my house bringing a meal, I would still have panic attacks. I don't even know why, but they would just happen. Like, just other people being around anyone else besides my husband was awful. I had difficulty differentiating between real life and things that happened in my dreams that were very similar to real life. So for instance, I would dream that I had got up, fed my son, pumped, and went back to bed. And then I would wake up, my son would be crying, and I could legitimately not tell if I had just gotten up to feed him or if that was really a dream. So it was a strange experience. I also had trouble sleeping because I was extra anxious about my son, just thinking he was just gonna stop breathing in his sleep or just something would happen to him. So I would just lay there exhausted and tired, just staring at the baby monitor, and my husband would be like, honey, go to sleep. He'd be like, honey, you need to sleep. And I'd be like, I can't sleep. I need to watch my son. I also had this weird belief that my husband would be better off if I was not around. I don't know if it was necessarily a suicidal thing, but it was definitely like, I need to be far away from him and then his life will be better. I also thought that my son didn't like me, which is ridiculous because he was a few months old and he didn't know what he liked and what he didn't like. Honestly, that's a ridiculous thought, but I had it. I also had this weird feeling of like, I wished I had never gotten pregnant. It was sad, really. I could only handle just a little bit of crying. Just a little bit. Like, if he cried for more than 30 seconds, I was so done. I just couldn't deal with it. And my son was a super good baby. He was like the best baby. He was every mom's dream baby. This kid slept through the night at 2 months. He hardly ever cried unless he was hungry. He was just such a joy. He still is a joy. He's a toddler now though, so it's that type of joy, as you can hear. I always had to give him to my husband. I just struggled anytime he would cry. I also dealt with something that's not very well known about, and that is d-mer, or dysphoric milk ejection reflex, which not many people have heard of, but it is where your hormones spike while you're breastfeeding or pumping, and it can cause things like nausea, feelings of extreme depression or anger while you're nursing or pumping. And it also, you get really hot and you get really uncomfortable. Some women have extreme pain. It's not a very fun thing, and not very many doctors really recognize it as a thing. So it just made breastfeeding that much more difficult. Hey buddy. Hey buddy. Do you want to color? You do? Okay. I am going to get my son some coloring books and let him go to town, so I will be right back. Okay, I'm back. I also felt inadequate as a mother. I felt like I could not do anything right, that I was doing everything wrong. I just felt like a failure. Every time my son needed me, I would have like this feeling of just like, oh. I had no joy taking care of him, which was awful. I clock watched for my husband to come home from work, so that I could hand the baby off to him and just kind of like wallow however I wanted to. Seth, don't color the floor. You color the picture. Color your picture. And finally, I would hear my baby crying even when he wasn't. So if he was in like the other room in his crib or something, I would just like hear this baby crying, and he was not crying. He was like asleep. So that was kind of weird. Phantom crying all the time. So, but that's just what I experienced. I basically tried to hide everything from everyone, including my husband, and let it build up and build up and build up. I tried to just shoulder the whole thing alone, and I felt like I was imploding and losing my mind. So we are 19 months postpartum. I am actually pregnant with our second one. I'm only just about 8 weeks, so we're not that far along. But I just want to say, if you're going through postpartum depression and anxiety, I just wanted you to know that you are going to get through this. Your days are going to get better. You're going to fall in love with your baby. You're going to bond with your baby. It is going to get so much better than what it is right now. And I want to encourage you to set up a treatment plan. I know, taking vitamins is important. Getting exercise is important. If you're a Christian, reading your Bible and prayer or meditation or whatever you do, all those things are important. But if you are not making any progress with those things, you need to seek professional help. There is absolutely no shame in that. I know a lot of people are against medication, but I just want to say medication made all of the difference for me. Once I got onto the right medication, it changed my life. It gave me an edge. I was able to get past it. I also went and saw a counselor, and she really helped me dig through things mentally and understand things and realize that, I am who I am, and I'm a mom, and I'm trying just as hard as every other mom out there. And people go through postpartum depression and anxiety and just general depression, and there is nothing wrong with that. There is nothing to be ashamed of. I mean, your brain is an organ like any other organ in your body. Your heart can be sick, your kidneys can be sick, your leg can be broken, all these different things. Your brain is no different. You will be happy with your life again. You will feel love toward your baby, toward your children, toward your husband, toward yourself again. I just want to tell you that I'm experiencing all these things right now. My life has took a complete 180. When I look at my son, I feel accomplishment, joy, excitement, wonder. I'm just amazed at how much he grows and does new things every day. He just brings us so much joy, and I'm so excited to bring him to bring him a sibling into the world and add that fun to his life. So I just want to say I'm here for you. If you have any questions, I will try to answer them as best as I can. I'm not a licensed professional to handle these types of things, but I can speak from my own experience, and I can just share with you what I experienced and what worked for me. So I know this was kind of a heavy video, and not all my videos are going to be like this, but that is one thing that is really on my heart to share with all of you. Again, I'm Emily B. If you liked my video today, be sure to subscribe, hit the like button, add a comment if you have a question, or if you experienced postpartum depression or anxiety. We are here for you. I don't want any negative comments here. I am here for you. I am rooting for you. And I know that if you don't give up, you can get through this. Thank you guys for watching, and I will see you next time.